So Hurricane Helene came through Florida, obviously where I'm located, and it's 100 miles offshore, but still caused a tremendous amount of flooding in the southwest part of Florida, which by that Cape Coral again, a couple years ago, Hurricane Ian hit there, Punta Gorda, Captiva, and then now it moved up north a little bit, all along the coast. So the Bay of Tampa, Tampa's Bay right there, you have this kind of swoop area and all these homes in St. Petersburg and Tampa, South Tampa, that got flooded in those areas. I believe Clearwater did too. Some of the people I've talked to, I haven't talked to anybody in Clearwater yet, but I've got clients elsewhere. And then obviously we know about what it did up in Tennessee and North Carolina and other parts of the country. But we're going to be talking about Florida here. We're going to be talking about, and this applies also to Tennessee, North Carolina, about the FEMA policy, your standard flood policy, what you need to know about it, maybe some changes that I've heard are going to be taking place, and what is the importance of certain things that I'm going to highlight in this video. So if you haven't seen any of my videos before, my name is Mike Keeler. I'm a licensed public adjuster in the state of Florida. Here's my information on how you can get in touch with me if you have any questions or need help with a claim. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is the water mitigation, mold remediation. When you have a flood in your house, obviously a lot of these companies are going to be in the neighborhood. You're going to find your neighbor probably has these people demoing everything out. In other words, taking out drywall, running these humidifiers, running the dryers to get everything from mold taking place, especially here in Florida with the weather that we currently have, and preventing the spread of mold. So the question I've asked and I've actually received from a couple people, is it necessary? You know what? That's up to you. If you don't find mold and you're going to be demoing most of the drywall anyhow, because some of the clients I've already talked to that I've had, they've had 4 to 5 feet water in their house. So if that's going to be ripped out, you have no mold, then it might be okay to do. You may not have to get these guys. So be careful with their contract, because most of them are going to require that you pay it within 60 days, or that the insurance does, or else they're going to put a lien on the house. Now, here's the positive that I went through with Hurricane Ian when I represented people for the flood claim, is that we were able to get, and for the most part, the flood insurance carriers and FEMA pay these claims quickly. Doesn't matter the insurance company, they have no skin in the game. Doesn't matter if it's Allstate, State Farm, Wright Insurance, Bankers. All these companies are just administrators for the FEMA policy, otherwise known as NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program. So, so just understand that. If you notice, there's going to be a lot of out-of-state companies coming into Florida to try and do work. And the one thing that I noticed back during Hurricane Ian with the flooding is that the NFIP FEMA policy, your standard flood policy, is going to pay significantly less for water and mold, water mitigation and mold remediation, than what FEMA allows, than what these flood adjusters allow. So two things has to happen in that case. Number one, either the water mitigation company, okay, or mold remediation will have to accept what FEMA allowed or what the flood adjuster allowed, or number two, you will have to pay the difference between them. Okay, and from what I remember, it was significant. So I think some of these water mitigation companies had $40,000-$50,000 bill, and the flood insurance only was paying like $13,000-$15,000 on most of these. I think maybe we had one or two in the 20,000s that the insurance company, the flood insurance, paid. So this is important to know this stuff, because a lot of people are going to rush off to water mitigation, and there's these points that you need to take in consideration before you call them. So let's talk about payouts, the legal environment, and being represented. So attorneys really don't mess with flood claims because it's a federal issue, meaning you would have to sue them in federal court, which a lot of attorneys aren't comfortable with. And also the flood claims are a little bit more complex. There's a lot of things that are covered, not covered. It's a huge manual on different things. So attorneys really don't want to get involved. So because of the nature of the flood claim, it's much, much different than homeowners. So whatever you are paid, that is pretty much it. And I'll explain in a little bit. Let me get to these two other points. I recommend people get a public adjuster from the start on any flood claim that you have. There's a reason for that. So you really have no lawsuits with a flood claim. You can, but they're very rare. Again, because attorneys don't like to handle them. You can appeal if you disagree directly to FEMA, and there would be a possibility of the appraisal. So, couple things. Let's back up. So, when I said whatever you're paid, that's pretty much it. Let me tell you the reasons why. During Ian, I had received calls of people getting paid 50, 40, 60,000. And they're like, Mike, my damages inside are over 100, 150, 200,000. So there are a lot of limitations in the policy. I won't go through everything. We're going to cover a couple things coming up. But part of the reason why whatever you are paid, that's it, is because of the federal atmosphere of what you have to do to get into and tap into more resources, aka money, from the insurance company. So if you don't have attorneys, and a public adjuster isn't going to get into it once you've been paid, because they don't know what you're entitled to further, or if there are these certain zones to where maybe you fall under, which limits the amount of money that you can recover. And then also what happens is that even if there's $20,000 more, that's not really going to be appetizing, just to be frank with you people, from a lot of public adjusters' point of view, because there's a lot of work they're going to have to do if they're going to appeal this and fight it. So this is why it's so important, because whatever you get paid, that's pretty much it, unlike a homeowner's claim. So it's a tough environment. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of these type of videos. So let's talk about now appliances, personal property. So no matter what you paid, if you have a Sub-Zero fridge, if you have a Viking fridge, you paid $30,000 or $20,000, or a nice LG that's $10,000, whatever it is, there's a certain price structure that are built in to the FEMA policies. Well, I think it was around $1,800. I could be wrong because this is 2 years ago during Ian, but it's going to be somewhere around this point. All right, give or take. So this is what you're going to get for a fridge, no matter what the cost of your fridge was. Same thing for like an oven, dishwasher, etc. So you want to make sure with your personal property, you make an extensive list. You want to put what the item is, okay, how old, and the price that you paid. You could do 3 categories. And everything from your shoes to the socks to the bedding. I mean, you're going to have so much in your house if you're going through this. You want to take photos before and after, or when all these things that you throw away are piled up outside. I don't care how many pictures you take, just take pictures. So number 2, let's talk about, now these are the bigger topics within the flood. There's other things, other minor things, but these are the current big items that I'm hearing there's going to be some changes on. So cabinets, with cabinets, they always paid the lower, but they never paid the upper. Ironically, Florida has a statute, it's called a matching statute. So how it would apply in this case is over the years, when your bottom part of the cabinets were damaged and they match your upper, you get both the upper and the lower paid for by the insurance company. For flood, that's not the case. So the Florida laws don't apply because, again, why? Because the NFIP and FEMA is a federal policy. It's federal. Federal laws apply. Hence the reason why, as I mentioned to you on the other side, attorneys don't want to handle it. So now what I'm hearing, in the Hurricane Ian, we got countertops paid a lot of times when I'm there with the flood adjuster. So countertops are going to be paid after, what I'm understanding, we'll see if this takes place, after the replacement of your cabinets, because they want to see photos if it was cracked and why. Well, 90% of countertops are going to crack when you remove them. It's just the nature of the beast. So why did it crack? There's pretty simple explanation, because they just simply crack when you're removing the item from a glued down, sealed down area. So again, remember, let me make this point. FEMA and the flood policies were not made for people that had money. This was actually for lower income individuals that can get back on their feet. Hence the reason why, well, I'm going to show you the next reason. So to carry on, hence the reason why in flooring, okay, the policy only covers carpeting. Now in Florida, hardly anybody has carpeting because of the heat. So we all have a lot of these tile floors or wood floors. So if during Hurricane Ian, I was able to get floors paid showing that there's water under the floors. So can you show water under your tile or wood floors, and will the insurance company pay for this now, your flood insurance? Well, I had a conversation the other day for one of my clients with the flood adjuster, and he said the FEMA supervisor told them that they should not give, meaning pay for, the floors. They will go to and are now looking to bring in engineers to say that the floors were improperly installed. My comment to this flood adjuster was, we will sue the pants off of these fraudulent engineers, because that's fraud. Because people's floors have been in place for 2, 3, 10 years, no issues. And then now there's a flood that comes in your house and you're going to say that they're improperly installed. So these are the reasons why, people, I'm telling you, get somebody from the start if you can. A lot of people hurry up and file their flood claim. And hopefully you guys get paid, but just be careful out there. So let's wrap this up. The conclusion on this, in your flood policy, there's so many different things that you have to look out for. Not only limitations, but the quality of what they pay for, like the appliance as an example. It's going to be substantially less maybe than what you've paid. So the other thing is that there are zones in your flood policy. Everybody has a different zone you live in. Some may be a lower elevated zone, some may be a higher elevated zone. Look on your policy to see what zone. I had clients that were in the AE zone, which means you're going to be, there's 2 different types of possible content and building coverages. One for like the regular zones, and there's a category of what those zones are. I don't know off the top of my head, because I only do flood claims when there's floods from a hurricane. And then you've got the lower zones, and zones that were actually assigned after the mapping took place and then you built a home. So in other words, let's say the mapping, what they call firm, it's called a firm, which is basically the flood mapping in certain areas, and it designates what zone you would be in. If you build a home after the last previous mapping, And during Hurricane Ian, we found out that a lot of mapping of certain areas were done in the 60s and 70s. So if you built a house in the 80s, you're after that map zone. So you've got to put your home according to whatever plans are so that it doesn't flood in that area. If not, you won't be paid any flood relief funds, even if you have a policy, because it falls under the code for what the previous mapping was, and you didn't get it up to code. It's confusing, I know. But as I'm saying, some of these zones pay less. So a lot of my clients had this AE zone, which again brings far less benefits than if you're a regular zone. So if you don't hire someone, a PA or attorney from the start, what you get paid is probably all you get paid. This is very important. If you don't hire anybody from the start, and most attorneys, like I said, don't hire flood, they're going to have a higher fee. I would look to a public adjuster first and ask them if they know what the hell they're talking about. There's a lot of PAs that don't know what the heck they're talking about. I know it's my profession. That's okay. I can talk about it that way because there are a lot of guys, unfortunately, that are not fully fluent in how to handle these claims. Let me make one other point. Another tip is that if the way these things get paid is 50% of the building value. Okay, if you have any questions on this call, I'm not going to go into great detail, but you can get an appraisal for the building only to raise that amount. And then that, if you have enough insurance to cover that, that will give you extra coverage. Let me give you an example. Let's say the building value with the county, only, not the land. Everybody forget the land and what your house is valued at, 1.4 million. That house may only be worth the building itself, 300,000. So according to this 50% rule, the most you can be paid is up to 150,000, but they'll cut it back a little bit. So let's just say 140. All right. And if you get an appraisal, and the appraisal on the building comes back of the structure to say 500,000, so now you've raised it. Half of that is what? 250. Before the other example, 300, 150 is half, right? So you've given yourself from 150 to 250, $100,000 more in possible insurance collection funds to help rebuild your home. So that's on the appraisal. I forgot to mention it during my slide, but I just remembered it. So again, my name is Mike Keeler, licensed public adjuster here in Florida. Here's my information, how you can get a hold of me. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. And for those of you that have suffered a flood, I'm very sorry. And I hope you get back to the road of recovery and rebuilding very, very soon.